Okay, so are you ready to climb Mount Everest?
Virtually, of course.
Exactly. No actual, risk of frostbite or anything, but still a pretty wild ride, I think.
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, so we're diving deep today into some Everest news, and, well, it's making headlines for kind of pricey reason.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah, so get this, climbing permits to summit Everest. They just got a whole lot more expensive.
Yeah, a lot more.
Like, we're talking a 36% jump.
Seriously?
Yeah, so it went from $11,000, which is already a lot, to a whopping $15,000.
Wow.
I know, right? So the question is this just Nepal, trying to cash in on Everest's fame?
Yeah.
Or is there something more going on here?
Well, it's probably not that simple. There's a lot of factors at play here.
Yeah, there's got to be.
Yeah, so first off, it's important to note that this is the first price increase in almost a decade.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, and that $15,000 fee only applies to, like, the prime climbing season,
Oh, right.
April to May when the weather's best. Permits for other times of the year, they also went up, but not as dramatically.
Okay, so it's like peak season pricing, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, $15,000 still, that's, not exactly spare change for most people.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm really curious about, like, what this price hike means for climbers, obviously, but also for the mountain itself.
Oh, sure.
So let's start with the money side of things. Why the sudden increase, and where's all that cash going?
Well, Nepal's been pretty open about the fact that, Everest permits are a big source of revenue for them.
Makes sense.
Yeah, tourism in general and, like, mountaineering especially, it contributes a ton to their economy.
Right.
To give you an idea, permits alone, they brought in over $3.5 million in 2022.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is, and that's just from the permits, right? Like, that doesn't even include all the other spending by climbers and their teams, on gear and yaks and Sherpas and all that.
Yeah, all the logistics and support.
Exactly.
Wow. So yeah, it's a huge industry.
It is.
Okay, but 15 grand, that's got to be a deterrent for some climbers, right?
Yeah.
Even those who can, like, afford it.
Well, you'd think so, right? But most of the climbing community, they actually saw this coming.
Really?
Yeah, in fact, Lucas Furtenbach, this guy who runs Furtenbach Adventures, which is like a big expedition company,
Okay, yeah.
he actually said the increase was expected and understandable.
Interesting.
Yeah. And he also said he hopes these extra funds will be used for, like, environmental protection and safety improvements on Everest.
Which would make sense,
Right.
if they're going to charge that much.
Exactly.
You'd hope they're putting it back into the mountain.
For sure.
Because let's be real here.
Yeah.
Everest has been making headlines for a lot of not-so-great reasons lately.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Overcrowding, garbage safety issues.
Right.
It's kind of disheartening,
Yeah.
You're paying a premium to climb this majestic peak. You don't want it to feel like a crowded, littered hiking trail.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of ironic, right? You're paying all this money to experience this pristine wonder of nature, but then it's, like,
Totally.
packed with people and...
Yeah, and there's trash, and it's just
Not exactly what you picture.
not the pristine image you have in your head, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah, and a lot of experts have been critical of Nepal for not, doing more to address these issues.
For sure. It's a really delicate ecosystem up there, and the sheer number of people trekking through, it inevitably leaves a mark.
Yeah, no matter how careful you try to be.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure. In 2022, they issued a record-breaking 323 permits for Everest.
Wow.
Yeah, it led to some pretty bad bottlenecks at, like, key points along the climbing routes.
Oh, wow. I can imagine.
Yeah, it's a lot of people. And then on top of that, there's the whole climate change issue.
Right, right.
Climbers are reporting the mountains becoming drier and rockier.
Yeah, I remember reading about that.
Yeah, and that's not just anecdotal evidence either.
Yeah.
There's a recent study published in the journal Nature Climate Change that found that glacial melt on Everest has accelerated by like 70% in the past 3 decades.
Wow, that's a huge number.
Yeah, it's alarming. And this increased glacial melt not only contributes to rising sea levels globally, but it also leads to, like, more exposed bedrock and a greater risk of rockfall on Everest.
Oh, wow. So it's making it even more dangerous.
Yeah, it's not good.
So it sounds like these issues, overcrowding the environmental impact, they're all connected in a way.
Absolutely. It's all part of the same bigger picture.
Yeah. And the question is, can this price hike actually help address those problems?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah, because Furtenbach seemed optimistic about it.
Yeah, I did.
But, will it actually happen?
Right. Nepal hasn't exactly been clear about how they plan to use the funds.
Yeah, that's true.
It's possible some of it will go towards conservation efforts and safety measures.
You'd hope so, right?
Yeah, but there's also the chance it just disappears into general government funds.
Right, right. Yeah.
And Nepal's track record on transparency and accountability, well, it hasn't been perfect. Let's just say that.
So there's reason to be skeptical.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, so it's complicated. We have this amazing natural wonder facing some serious challenges.
Yeah.
You've got climbers willing to shell out a small fortune to experience it,
Yeah.
and you have a government trying to balance, the economic gains with the environmental responsibility.
It's a tough situation for sure.
Yeah, it really has. And it makes you think about the true cost of climbing Everest.
Right.
Is it just the price of the permit, or does it include, the environmental impact, the
Mhm.
potential risks to climbers, and even the ethical considerations?
Yeah, like are we commercializing something that should be sacred?
Exactly. There's so much more to consider than just the dollar amount.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, Everest is getting pricier, but is it getting better? Are those breathtaking views worth the cost, both financial and environmental?
It's a question every climber has to answer for themselves, I think.
Yeah, and for anyone listening who's ever dreamed of standing on top of the world, you know, here's something to ponder. If you were in charge of Everest, how would you balance the economic potential of the mountain with the need to protect it?
Right.
It's a challenge that goes way beyond just setting a price tag.
Totally.
All right, well, that's our deep dive into the economics and ethics of climbing Mount Everest.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining. It's been a really fascinating discussion.